Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thanks, guys, for coming today. This is a big issue. It's not only a big issue for the VA, it's a national issue. I have 1 in 7 of my constituents are veterans. It's a really big number in that particular district. And PACT Act, I was going to say, didn't make anything any easier on anybody. It sure made it harder for good reasons. But again, thinking ahead, knowing this big, huge influx would occur, I think we honestly could have done a little bit better job anticipating that. But anticipation is not one of the things that Congress does very, very well. Major competition today for doctors and nurses. We saw during the pandemic that travel nurses became a disruptor, as it were. I always want people to earn as much as they can, but the fact that it did this so much in the private world, it absolutely disrupted how people pay structures. So I want to go down that alley. I think Representative Brownlee really brought up some good parts about marketing, and I'm going to get to those in just a second. But can someone answer to me how travel nurses were dealt with during that era? Because if they have to be federally employed, and you have to go through this many hoops just to get them in the private world, how was that dealt with during the pandemic?
Specifically, us recruiting for travel nurses?
No, I mean, if you need nurses, you want to recruit travel nurses. But if we're talking about this absolute ridiculous bureaucracy that people have to go through to get hired by the VA, how did you guys do it during the pandemic?
A couple of different pathways. So we have our own internal travel nurse group that follows the normal hiring process that we use in VHA, but we had a focused attention on bringing them on board, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, so that we could source them out to different locations. And we were tracking what was going on with those hires every single day. We also are able to use clinical staffing contracts at the local level if we need to have a contracted nurse to provide some temporary relief when we can't staff.
This is where I'm just trying to get to. We did things well during the pandemic and cutting down the bureaucracy. There's absolutely no reason we have to go backwards and go back into embrace the bureaucracy. You know, I'm told that it takes, it's 9 months to hire somebody. And Ms. Silas, did you say something about 3 months?
Yeah.
So what's the discrepancy here? I'm not sure I understood.
It could be that the data that I'm citing is from a report that's been like 6 months since it's been released.
Okay.
So I don't know if they've made some updates.
Because I will tell you, at my institution where I work, if I hire a physician or something, getting them in the door, getting all their licensure and all that other stuff is 4 months. Why on earth would it take the VA 9 months? Why does government always have to be so much more bureaucratic? And I know you pointed out to 83 of those things. It sounds like we need to get rid of like 82 of them.
We would like to get rid of a solid number of them. So there are things that we did during the early days of the pandemic that we would like to be able to replicate. Some of those will require legislative change or continued work with our partners at other agencies to get some of the pre-employment tasks shifted to later in the process. Then there are, of course, expedited or emergency authorities we have that we always have related to credentialing, for example, but you have to be in an emergency situation to use them.
Right, well, I mean, I'm sorry, I think taking care of people, and especially with mental health patients, is an emergency, and that we're seeing an absolute explosion with mental health needs from things that occurred because of the pandemic and occurred during the pandemic, and that's not getting any worse, I mean, any better whatsoever. And the private sector is bleeding for people to come in and do mental health, especially in our kids, which hasn't affected quite the VA quite yet. I'll just reiterate Representative Brownlee's comments about marketing. Don't be a passive marketer, because when there is such a dearth of individuals, you have to be an active marketer. And I've got a lot of gray hair, I still practice, but all I hear is burnout, burnout, burnout from my fellow physicians. And with the regulation, what this government loves to pour on regulation in medicine, we're the most highly regulated industry. If you guys could reach out to the 55 and older group of physicians, don't let them retire. Don't let them go off into the blue yonder, because doctors don't do very well in retirement. Seek them out. Go into the American Urologic Society. Go into these other societies. Putting something on a board for people to seek out, it's just like checking a box. It's not being an active pursuit of people.